ustedes. Primero que nada agradecer, porque me parece que la exposición nos permite volver a clarificar los objetivos y también las dificultades. Y lo que pensaba era, por un lado, Médicos Sin Fronteras supone esto, sin fronteras. Uno podría decir estamos en un mundo globalizado, pero aún así, cuando hay guerras, están las fronteras bien determinadas. Pero la pregunta por ahí es, hace 40 años que están trabajando, por algún motivo, supongo que esta charla viene cerrada en estos tiempos, digamos, si hay algo que se complicó más, digamos, en las últimas intervenciones, de lo político, militar, digamos, que antes por ahí no lo tenían, supongo que cuando trabajan en enfermedades es diferente que cuando trabajan en el medio de guerras, debe ser diferente, ¿no? La ayuda a digamos, frente a enfermedades debe ser diferente. Pero si hay algo a entender de este mundo, digamos, que lo hace difícil en estos momentos esa distinción y ustedes tienen que tratar de esa. ¿Se entendió la pregunta?
It's extremely difficult. And that is also why we take this message to different places. This is just sort of, I consider this as an informal discussion, but we've delivered this message in an even stronger terms to the NATO, and we've had very good discussions because the military understands what they're doing as well. They have their own objective. I just want to point out, we are not anti-military. Yeah? For example, I just want to give you 3 scenarios. Haiti last year. We responded, in fact, within 6 hours or 12 hours, we were actually working on our first patient, trying to help out, etc. And the other big actor was, of course, the US Navy, who had incredible capacity. They had this big, huge ship that was docked near Port-au-Prince, and we, in fact, referred some of our patients to the US Navy ship. Right? So that's one instance. Then you have Afghanistan. If you are seen with a US soldier, you can basically be assured that you're going to be in some trouble. But then you have a situation like Pakistan, where you had at the same time you had Swat Wadi, which had Afghan type of context, very difficult, very difficult area, people with guns, not very friendly to foreigners. And in the Kashmir area, you had natural disaster, a Haiti type of situation. How do you then behave, or how do you form your dialogue or your engagement in a country like Pakistan in that particular context, where if you use the military capacity to take assistance to Kashmir, because it's a very difficult terrain, and military has heavy lifting capacity who can actually help you get to those places. But at the same time, if you're seen working with the military, then you can kiss your action goodbye in other part of the country. So these are the kind of dilemmas that we have to face in carrying out our work. So what makes the distinction is whether the military is in a humanitarian mode, like it was in Haiti, or whether it is in a belligerent mode, like it was in Afghanistan. So we like I said earlier, principles, but we also have to be pragmatic.
Pero ahora enseguida vamos a la pregunta. ¿Cómo construye la cultura institucional? Porque es fácil imaginarse que el director de Médicos Sin Fronteras tenga claro cómo enfrentar cada situación. Pero ustedes tienen mucha gente trabajando, con la innovación de gente permanentemente. ¿Cómo hace la institución para desarrollar esta cultura institucional? Está todo el tiempo encima de la gente que está con cursos, o es ya una cultura muy arraigada que permite un manejo más o menos descentralizado de la situación. Prefiero la cultura institucional interna, ¿no?
Yes. So, like I sort of very quickly mentioned, MSF is a movement. What does that mean? We are actually an association of doctors, nurses, and all of the other people that come together to provide assistance. So, yes, like I'm the president now, it's an elected position. I'm elected by the association. And then I, of course, together with the board, appoint the executive who actually do the job on a day-to-day basis. So the executives are also members of the association. The association sets the direction for the movement. It decides what the mandate of the movement is. It gives direction for the executive to carry. So one thing that is sometimes can be incredibly frustrating and incredibly tiresome for someone like me is that the endless discussion and debate that we have in MSF over everything. So there is a whole culture of discussion and debate that is there in MSF, which I find actually quite important to keep this kind of movement alive. We are 40 years old, and like everybody who's been 40, you know, it's a time for midlife crisis. It is absolutely important when we are such a big organization that we have the space for inspiration and space for people to discuss and debate. Everyone needs to feel that they are part of this whole movement and they all have a say in what is going on. Now, not everybody, of course, feels that way, but we have, by and large, an incredible culture of debate. The reason I'm here in Buenos Aires is because tomorrow we are going to have the meeting of the MSF Latin America Association, where people are coming from different parts of the continent to discuss and debate, and a lot of the discussion, results of the discussion and debate will be taken to the International Assembly, where people come and present their ideas. So that's how we work as an organization. We don't nearly do as much training as we should do. We make very weak attempts to brainwash people, but it doesn't really work because they're very chaotic in the way they work.
Yo no deseo hacer una pregunta, sino quiero hacer un comentario. Todos los que estamos acá admiramos la acción y la tarea que ustedes cumplen, pero las ONG en el país y en el mundo están reemplazando actividades que en realidad son responsabilidad y obligación de los gobiernos. Por ejemplo, la Cruz Roja Internacional es la responsable de hacer la asistencia sanitaria en los momentos de desastre en cualquier parte del mundo. Yo temo, y lo digo con un poco de pesar, que se produce una competencia entre lo que es una responsabilidad del Estado y lo que es una voluntad de los particulares. En un mundo organizado, como debe ser el nuestro, el Estado es el responsable de hacer estas cosas. Y nosotros como ciudadanos tenemos obligación de requerir que el Estado sea el que junta. ¿Por qué? Cuando usted te explica, usted muestra que tiene grandes voluntades y tiene grandes dificultades, porque usted es un civil, usted no es un funcionario del Estado, usted no está bajo los mandatos de la ley del rige del momento. Naciones Unidas, la Cruz Roja Internacional y esos organismos que son oficiales son los que deben actuar. Yo los felicito, creo que todos estamos admirados por su tarea, pero es necesario aclarar esto: el Estado debe cumplir su responsabilidad. Es un comentario y no es una pregunta. Muchas gracias.
I couldn't agree with you more. It is the government's responsibility to take care of the people, but unfortunately, in many parts of the world, they are not doing that. And it's when the system fails and breaks down, then civil society expresses itself in different ways. And MSF is one such expression of a global civil society that comes together and say that people, whether it is because of a conflict, whether it is because of a natural disaster, whether it is in some countries they are actively neglected by their governments because they come from a particular race. And I can tell you that in a country where I come from, in India, there are certain segments of the population that are not able to access healthcare like the rest of the people. So in these sort of situations, it's a mandate that we give ourselves. We don't have a mandate from government, and we don't need a mandate from governments, because we are the people and we are helping out other people. And it's as simple as that. But of course, we engage with governments, we talk to them, we recognize their responsibility, and very often we push them to kind of take their responsibility. In all of what we do not try to duplicate services. We go there if we have an added value. If there is a gap that exists, that is when we act.
Vamos a la última pregunta.
I think really that things are becoming very difficult for you, for the organization in general. But I assume that you can differentiate at least three situations. One is when you have a disaster, natural disaster, and then you might be asked to help with your resources by local organizations. Probably then your neutrality does not really bother at all, on the contrary. The other one is when you decide to put up a program under a situation like maybe in Argentina, charlas. This is your decision to include this in your programs, and it probably doesn't really have any problem with your independence, your neutrality. So I think that the main problem is when this comes with conflicts, with armed conflicts, that nowadays are really very long conflicts, so it's not coming and going away, but installing yourself and problem. And my concern is how, if you want to maintain your principles of neutrality, at the very end, it might mean that in some cases you're not able to give the humanitarian aid that is needed. So how to combine this? I think that's the main thing that comes to my mind right now.
Absolutely, and I think so. The first two instances that you talked about, so a natural disaster, I think there's no real dilemma there. It's how you provide services, and what is important there is the speed of your reaction, because it's the first few days after any natural disaster is most important, especially if you're focused on saving lives. It was true in Japan earlier this year, but also in Haiti last year, and floods in Pakistan. And there, because of the expertise and because of the capacity we have the ability to directly, our doctors and nurses directly work in providing assistance, and in some instances, like we are doing in Turkey now, we work with local agencies who have the capacity to provide assistance.
Quería comentar algo, pero ya no se puede.
And the second instance of charlas, again, we work in Bolivia, we work in Paraguay, we have large treatment programs. Here, of course, we work with the Ministry of Health to provide assistance. But we know that as humanitarian workers that we are there to treat patients, we are not there to treat systems. So our objective is not to build up the Bolivian Ministry of Health or the Paraguayan Ministry of Health. That is the responsibility of the government, like this gentleman said. I agree. But we help them treat the patients because sometimes governments don't have the capacity. Again, it's not a problem. But of course, in conflict area, we have the kind of dilemmas. There are times where we are not able to provide, we are not able to carry out independent assessments, and we are not able to reach the populations that need help. Somalia today is a place where we are not sure whether we will be able to we work in Somalia in different parts of the country, but the most affected areas we are not able to reach today. One could argue that North Korea is an example. Syria today, agencies don't have access to Syria. We can't go in and see what is going on there. A few years ago in Sri Lanka, we had to make some difficult choices and compromises in order to get access to the populations, the Tamil population that was interned by the government. So this is, in fact, we have just published a book which, with several case studies that talk about some of the difficult choices that we've had to make in the past 20 years or so. I think it will make an interesting reading for you.
Gracias a todos ustedes por asistir.